Hi, I'm Karen Spurtzel with the Maryland Sheep and Wool 2021 Virtual Festival, and we're talking to Tanis Gray. She's a prolific designer, has been featured in major publications, written several books, and her most recent is Star Wars Knitting the Galaxy, the official Star Wars knitting pattern book.
Yes.
She lives in Fairfax, Virginia, with her husband and two children, um, uh, practically a local for the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival.
Yeah, it's my favorite festival to go to.
um, because you can bring your car and stock it up. Huh? That's what.
Absolutely. Yep, leave the kids, bring the car, and all of the bags to carry all of the wool to bring home in. Yes.
When did you start knitting?
I've been knitting for over 30 years. My mom taught me originally and kind of pawned me off onto a neighbor who was a better knitter than she was. And I used to ski race. So we would go up to New Hampshire. I grew up in Boston every weekend to race. And there was a local yarn shop up there. And the woman took me under her wing and, put two colors of yarn in my hands and DPNs and said, "You're destined to be a colorwork knitter." And she was right. So she changed my life. She was a wonderful woman.
So is color work your preferred uh,
Absolutely.
technique? I guess is the word.
Yeah, and when I knit with one color, I always think like, where's my other color? It's I grew up with a fine artist mother, and it's the closest you can get to kind of painting with yarn, um, and and really creating different motifs. And I always think of it as storytelling. I can create a whole story with two colors and yarn, which you can't necessarily do with one color. So it's my favorite to teach and to design and to knit.
Well, a lot of the patterns that you particularly designed in the Star Wars book are color work.
Yes, and I have to sometimes rein myself in because I tend to go heavy on the color work, and it's not for everyone. But I'm always kind of determined to pull people into the color work cult. But we have to. It's interesting writing a book because you have to have a delicate balance. That there's something for everyone. That's really important to me.
So where did you come up with the idea for this
Well,
book?
I was approached. I my same publisher that I had done the official Harry Potter book with, Insight Publications. We had kind of made a wish list, and that book had been very successful. And we have maybe 50 books we want to do together. And very high up on the list was Star Wars. And I've been a nerd my whole life, and it's finally kind of coming in handy. And we worked with Lucasfilms as well, and it's really interesting working in an official capacity because you get access to all this behind the scenes things and archives and get to poke around their files from the 70s and looking at this stuff from before I was born in these movies that I love so much and really getting to feel like a part of it and getting to use the words that you can't normally use in an unofficial book. So having the capacity to work with all these people it's a dream come true.
So how did you find the other designers? Because you have several co-designers in the book.
Yeah, and I really like to work that way. My husband calls me a conductor because I'm kind of putting together all the instruments to make this opus, I guess you could say. It's a lot of people that I've written 13 books, 11 are out. Star Wars was the 11th, and two more come out in the fall. So some of these people I've worked with before. Some I'm just a great admirer, and I'll kind of cold email them and say, I'm working on this top secret project. You're amazing at lace, or you knit and tarja unlike anyone else. Do you want to come along for the ride? And Instagram is great. You can kind of silently stalk people, for lack of a better word, online and see their body of work. And it's a great way to work with designers that I've always really admired and wanted to work with in some sort of capacity. So I love group projects. They're a lot of fun.
So you said you have two more coming out
I
in the
do.
fall. Can you talk about
One-
them?
Um, not really. But if you were to go on Amazon and put my name in there, they may or may not show up. One is a sequel, and one is one I'm incredibly excited about. So September and October for those.
Okay, we'll look
Same
forward to it.
publisher. Yeah.
How did you start designing?
Uh, just not finding what I wanted, which I think is how a lot of designers started. I was I was 8 when I started designing my own mittens. I wanted, I think, pink and purple unicorn mittens, which I still really would like a pair of pink and purple unicorn mittens. And I just couldn't find them. So, when you're 8, you don't have as many problems as you do as an adult. So just messing around till I kind of got them to fit and how I wanted them to look, and just starting right away. That woman at the New Hampshire yarn shop, which no longer exists, she just taught me to be fearless. What's the worst that happens? You have to rip it out and start again. It's not the end of the world, especially after going through a pandemic, right? We've been through some pretty tough times. So ripping out a sweater, it can be annoying, but you want it to be the way you want it to be. So just trial and error. And my whole life, I've just kind of made what I wish that I was available to me.
Do you have a favorite? I was going to say garment, but I don't actually mean just garment. Do you have a favorite object to design?
I really like cowls. I think they're the perfect gift because everyone has a neck, right? And you don't have to worry about fit, where hats are kind of hit or miss, and fitted garments and things like that. And they're so forgiving, especially for designing. Take a few stitches away, add a few stitches. I really like to teach them because it's hard to screw them up, and they're also really hard to lose. I am a champion at losing scarves and things that can kind of fall off a neck, so cowls tend to stay put. So I like cowls.
You said you like color work. Do you have a preference for stranded versus mosaic versus intarsia?
Fair Isle's my favorite stranded color work. Mosaic is kind of the cool cousin of stranded color work, and I like that one too. Intarsia and I have kind of reached an understanding that we'll be frenemies for the rest of our lives, and that's okay. And I've gotten really into double knitting lately too. So
Oh,
anything I can throw color at, more than one color, sign me up.
now can you wear double knitting in this area? It's kind of
Yeah,
warm.
I mean, I'm from Boston, so when and we're in Virginia, so anytime there's a snowflake, it's interesting to watch everyone freak out and everything shuts down. But a double knit hat, we hike a lot, and we still go to New Hampshire every year. Um, those will keep you really warm. Those are nice. And mittens, and I mean, nothing will get through double knit mittens.
Is going back to the Star Wars book, is there a project in that book that is a particular favorite of yours?
Yeah, there's some Wookie socks. It is not my design, but you can never find the one that you're looking for, right? That they're just so clever. They, at first glance, they just look like beautiful socks. It's by a designer named Natalie Sheldon. She's up in Canada. They're just they're really cool. And they're clever. And I like kind of almost being part of the secret club of, oh, you knit your socks, how cool. Are those Wookiee socks? You take like a second glance, and I didn't want the book to be campy. I wanted there to be projects that you would want to knit and wear in your every knits are designed to be worn, right? So wear them every day, wear them out, darn the heel. I love that kind of hidden fandom in your knitwear without being overly, kind of obvious about it.
Do you have the time or energy to knit uh, things from other designers?
I try. I really, there's so many amazing designers out there, and I really admire their work. So I try to always, like any real knitter, I have about 15 projects on my needles, and most of them are for publication, but I try to knit stuff from other designers too. It's nice to not always be the one, writing the pattern or designing it or knitting the samples. So I think it's important to branch out.
Do you have
Absolutely.
a favorite designer that as soon as you see them pop up, you go, oh, I've got
Yeah,
to go.
Marie Wallen for me is she's kind of the queen of stranded color work. I think I would fangirl on her hard if I saw her at a festival for sure.
Have you ever tried one of her sweaters?
Yes, I've done her Fair Isle Club a couple times. They're works of art. They're
Oh,
beautiful.
I'm impressed because I look at those, I drool, and I think, yeah, I'd be
You can
knitting
do
for
it.
years.
I mean, knitting doesn't go bad, right? So cast it on, and in 5 years, you'll be happy that you have it.
As soon as I finish a cable sweater I've been working on for almost a year now.
Oh, there is no judgment.
What's the design process for you? Where do you get an idea, and how then do you take it to uh, an actual finished garment that you're happy with and you've sent out into the world?
It depends what the purpose of it is. So if it's something, like specifically for Star Wars, I already have a theme that I need to work with. But I try to take a walk every day, which has been challenging with two small kids home all of the time for over a year. But looking at shadows on the ground, this time of year is interesting because the way the light has changed so drastically, and the shadows from the leaves and the flowers are popping up. Versus, what book is my son reading in school? They were reading Charlotte's Web a couple of years ago. And so we were reading it out loud together. So I thought, Charlotte's Web mittens would be really cool. So there's certainly not a lack of inspiration. There is a lack of time, especially these days with everyone home. But um, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So we'll get there.
So once you have your inspiration, do you immediately just pick up yarn and start knitting? I know nothing about the design process. I've never designed anything.
Yeah, it depends on what its purpose is. So if it's for a magazine or a book or a yarn company, sometimes I'm sent colors, like you are using these colors and this yarn, run with that. Sometimes it's more of a yardage challenge, like we're giving you, a bunch of mini skeins, make something. And I like those challenges because it's not always a one and done. Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board because you run out of yarn. If it's something just for me, I might go stash diving, say like, oh, these colors are beautiful. They need to be something. I don't know what yet. Or I'm always drawing charts. If I'm on, a really long, boring phone call, or uh, just another sleepless night, I might just be drawing charts, and I have kind of a homeless chart file and think, okay, this would really be beautiful as a sweater. And then I'll get yarn. So I kind of come at it from all different sides. My personal stuff, the independent designs, are a lot different than stuff for publication. And they're both really fun challenges. I like really strict parameters, and then I like having none. So it just kind of depends on what kind of day it is.
Do you have any advice for somebody like me who's not going to do it for publication, but may have a couple of skeins that they think are gorgeous and they can't find just the right project for them?
I think just, grab, if it's color work, grab some graph paper and a pencil, or you can even use Excel. You can just kind of resize your cells to be squares and make your chart. And everything you make does not have to be a something, right? So it might just be a beautiful swatch that you hang on your wall and it makes you happy. And right now we need happy. Or, you really want to make a cowl, or you love this hat that you have, but you wish the motif was different. And that's really easy. As long as you stick within the parameters of the stitch count, you can sub in your own chart. It doesn't always have to be for something. If I really do think that at the end of the day, if you've made something pretty that makes you happy, or if it's a gift, your recipient happy, then that's all that matters. It doesn't have to be made public for the masses, unless that's your goal. And that's a great goal too. So I think just liking what you make, and pretty yarn and happy colors and nice fiber, um, that's enough.
Yeah. What resources, knitting resources, do you have in your life? Do you have a library, and what are your go-to to references?
The Principles of Knitting is a great book. It's a nice thick, and they just reprinted it a few years ago. That's a nice one. I really like these new magazines that are coming out that are almost more like books, like the Shetland Wool Journal, and um, more of these like kind of coffee table magazines that are more about the writing or the history behind a company or a particular designer, and then with a little bit of pattern support. But even just looking at Fair Isle charts are beautiful. My husband calls it yarn porn. I'll be just like looking at charts. He's like, what are you're always looking at charts. Are you gonna ever do anything? It's like, they're just pretty. I'm imagining what they could be when they grow up. Charts are really pretty. So
Have you looked at any? You've talked a lot about Marie Wall and the Shetland and the Fair Isle. Do you ever gravitate towards any of the Scandinavian or Baltic color work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love Estonian braids and Latvian braids. I use those a lot. And I lecture a lot on the history of knitting. So it's, the Selbu knitting and knitting is fascinating. And Elizabeth Zimmerman said, knitting is as old as sheep. So there's there's never a lack of resources to read about. And I am an equal opportunity knitter. I love all the techniques and I love to read about them and learn more about them. And you'll never know it all, which I love too, because it's a lifelong experience. It's not even just a hobby, because hobby has sometimes some negative connotation, like, oh, you knit, isn't that cute? No, it's an experience, and I'll never know it all, and I love that.
Do you still take classes?
Absolutely. Yeah, and with the pandemic, it's been great to take a class. I took one in Spain a couple months ago. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. and I really wanted to take a class with that designer. And I teach. I've been teaching for years, but now it's nice to teach and have students, from Japan and Australia who wouldn't necessarily be able to take one of my classes. With little kids, I don't travel a ton. So it's really kind of made our global community in some ways closer, which is great.
So you've taught in person, you've taught online. What are the differences in it? Do you have a preference now that you've done both?
I still miss the human interaction, and being able to sit next to someone and kind of take their knitting and maybe put my hands on top of their hands and show them how to do a technique. I don't teach the beginners. I teach more advanced technique and usually color work. Um, and I've been kind of surprised at how almost seamless the transition has been. I have multiple cameras and they have a hand cam, so it's like they're kind of lurking over my shoulder. But I do miss kind of that sense of, we finished a class, like, let's go have a meal together, or a high five, or try that on, it looks amazing, or get up and look at other people's color choices. I miss that human interaction for sure, but I also really like that we've been able to stay connected
Mhm.
uh now more than ever. It's especially if you live alone, or your kids are gone, or you're just by yourself all day, knowing that, we can get together for a class, I think has been a lifesaver for a lot of people. I know it's kept my sanity level probably from dipping down to zero, just being with other knitters. It's hard to be with little kids all day. I miss being with adults and, nerding out over a really beautiful wool. So it's nice to have that still.
With small children, even when they are in school, like normal or like it used to be, I'm not sure what if we'll ever have that normal again. Um, have you found it tough to find time both to design because that's your business and that's your profession, and to have recreational knitting?
Absolutely. And even something as simple as reading a book. I don't have time. We're virtual still, all school. So it's everyone's home all the time. And that's hard with a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old. I have a sleep disorder, which means I don't need a lot of sleep. So my work day typically starts at 9 p.m. And that's nice because the house is quiet. That's the only way I've been able to write, 3 books during the quarantine. But yeah, I haven't really picked up anyone else's patterns to knit, and I certainly haven't been as prolific as I like to be. But it's also a priority keeping us all safe. So, having that light at the end of the tunnel, we've been vaccinated. We'll get there. But I look forward to. I really miss, the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival and seeing my people and buying all of the pretty things. So I hope next year we're back in person.
Well, that would be great, and maybe next year you can be up there with your two new books.
Yes, yep, and who knows what else I'll have up my sleeve by then.
Um, and where can people find your books to purchase if they?
Well, I do have a coupon code too. This is the newest one, the Star Wars one. If you go to the publisher's website, which is Insight Editions, and if you use the coupon code KNIT35, you can get 35% off of the book,
Oh,
which
great.
is nice. And that's also kind of a May the 4th be with you. I don't know if you're not, I know you're not super into Star Wars, but May the 4th is a big holiday for us nerds, very proud nerd. So you can actually, I think, use that coupon site wide. So if you had your eyes on the Harry Potter book as well, or they do a lot of beautiful books, Knit 35 should work across the board.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for
Uh,
having me.
and like I said, hopefully next year we'll all be together up at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, take some classes. I've taught there before. There's amazing classes, and I miss the sheep.
I do too. I miss all the yarn and fondling it. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.